This meeting is being recorded.
All right, you are now live.
Great, thank you. Hello and welcome to the Accessibility Advisory Committee for June 16, 2025. This is a virtual meeting. I call this meeting, committee meeting is being called to order at 4:05 p.m. And without a stutter, we will go to the land acknowledgement. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties assigned in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. We'll start today's meeting with a roll call and AV check. When I call your name, I would ask each member to ensure their video and microphone is working. So first one is Councillor Laura White. Good afternoon. Thank you. Councillor Jean Saint-Amand.
I'm here as well.
Thank you. Councillor Trish Purdy.
There.
Thank you. Nicholas Harris.
Here.
Here, okay. Do you have your camera on? Oh, yeah, right there. Sorry. Couldn't see. Anne Sinclair.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Jamil Sino.
Hi, everyone.
Kathy Stevenson. Okay. Is the audio working, Kathy?
Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Oliver Keith. Is Oliver here yet?
Oliver has not joined the meeting yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we have Rochelle Manette.
I am here.
Thank you. And the next on the list is me, Céline Vautour, and Glenn Babcock sends his regrets. Just to note, Kathy, your audio is on. We were just trying to test if your audio was working. Thank you so much. So now we're going to pass the floor to the legislative assistant to run the election for the new chair that we're going to have in November. So I will pass it to you, Elizabeth.
So to be clear, the chair, we're doing the election now for chair.
Okay. Oh, it's for now?
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, sorry.
So I don't know if that is influencing who's going to put their name forward.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Oh, okay. So I thought it was like an election. Here I am finding this out on live feed, but whatever. This is how my life goes. No, it's all good. So that means this would be the last session that I'm chair.
If you don't self-nominate or someone doesn't nominate you.
Okay, yeah, that's all good.
So,
I'm good. All right,
absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. So we will move on to 1.1, annual election of chair. So I will open the floor for nominations for the position of chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. And just before I call it for nominations, just a reminder that all members have the option to either self-nominate or nominate another member. So I will call for nominations for the position of chair. Councillor, I see a hand up. Councillor Sinema.
Thank you. I'd like to nominate Céline for chair once more, if that is acceptable.
Thanks.
I know it's a lot to ask.
I know.
But you've done an excellent job.
Thank you. It's reassuring to know. Given, because it would be an 18-month term again, wouldn't it, Elizabeth? When would be?
So it would be until we have the next election of chair, which this committee tends to have that election in June. So it would be until next year.
Right.
When
yeah.
the next election. Yeah.
I really loved being chair. I've learned so much through this role, but I will not really be able to place my candidacy again because I also recently got a job where it's going to complicate things. So I will have to step down if tonight, when somebody is elected, it will no longer be me. But thank you. I'm glad somebody thought of me. So thanks.
Okay, I'll call a second time for nominations for the position of chair.
This is Rochelle. I will self-nominate.
Do we have a seconder for that?
I will happily second.
Perfect.
Thank you.
And I don't have to ask you if you accept the nomination, because I'm assuming you do. Okay, perfect. So I will now call a third time for any nominations for the position of chair. Okay, hearing none, we will cease nominations, and we have our nominee, who is Rochelle. So we will just need now a mover and a seconder for a motion that Rochelle Manette be appointed chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee.
So moved.
Could I have
I can second.
you? That's Nicholas. All right, I will now call for the question. All those in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? All right, that motion passes. Rochelle, you are the successful candidate, and you can now assume the role of chair.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Celine,
Congratulations.
for a wonderful year of being the chair that I got to watch and be a part of. So thanks, everyone.
So, Rochelle, it's up to you as the chair. You may either run the other two elections, the annual election of vice chair and the ATAC or Active Transportation Advisory Committee representative, or if you'd feel more comfortable, I could do it as well. It's up to you.
I mean, you're doing such a great job already. Maybe
Oh,
if you just
thank you.
continue with the
Yeah.
nominations and election process, and then I'll take over after. So thanks.
Sure. So we'll move on to item 1.2, annual election of vice chair. So just like the first election, I will open the floor for nominations for the position of vice chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Calling once. Calling twice for any nominations for the position of vice chair. Reminder, you can self-nominate or nominate another member. Celine, I see your hand.
Oh, yeah. So basically, Glenn's not here. I would nominate Glenn as vice chair, but I don't know if he would be interested in this position, because that's the thing. I've appreciated a lot of his input throughout this last year. So, but he unfortunately couldn't be here tonight.
Is a bit tricky since he's not
Yeah.
here to accept the nomination. I know I had checked in with him beforehand about the ATAC nomination, and he said he would accept a nomination to be, I guess, reappointed as the ATAC representative. So, but unfortunately, I don't know if we'd be able to nominate him without him accepting. So I'll call another time for any nominations for the position of vice chair.
Hi, this is Anne. I'd like to nominate Nick if you.
I'll second the nomination.
Okay, perfect. Nick, do you accept that nomination?
Sure. I'd be happy to.
Okay. Excellent. So we have a nominee. I will call a third and final time for any nominations for the position. All right, hearing none, nominations will cease, and we will move to a motion that Nicholas Harris be appointed vice chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. I will call for the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? This motion carries. Congratulations, Nicholas. I will now move on to item 1.3, election of Active Transportation Advisory Committee representative. Same as the other items, I will open the floor for nominations for the position of ATAC representative.
Since you did already have the conversation with Glenn about his interest in the position, I'd like to nominate Glenn.
Yeah, I'll second.
Seconder, Colleen, perfect. All right, so I have one nominee. I will call a second time for any nominations. And I will call a third and final time for any further nominations for the position of ATAC representative. Right, hearing none, nominations will cease and we will move to a motion to appoint Glenn as ATAC representative. I will
So
need
moved.
okay. Councillor St. Amand, and do I have a seconder for that?
In second.
Right, perfect. So we will call for the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? This motion carries. Glenn will be appointed ATAC representative. With that, I will pass the floor back off to the chair. Do you have a copy of the annotated agenda handy?
Yes, yeah, I
Rochelle?
pulled it up
Okay,
just in case.
Yeah.
Gotta plan ahead.
Great. So I will
Okay.
hand it back off to
Cool.
Rochelle.
Thank you. All right. And thanks everyone. So moving on to number 2, approval of minutes. I will now ask if there are any errors or omissions for the minutes of April 14th, 2025 meeting. I'm seeing nothing. If there are none, I will invite a member to move the following: that the minutes of May 12th, 2025 Accessibility Advisory Committee be approved as presented.
So moved.
Thank you. Moved, I think, Jean Saint-Amand, and then seconded, Laura White. Cool. All right. Okay, I'll call for the question. All those in favor say aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
Lots of hands. Cool. Thank you. All those opposed say nay or raise your hands. The motion has been carried. Number 3, approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. We will now move to the approval of the order of business for today's meeting. To our legislative assistant, are there any changes to today's agenda?
There are no changes from the clerk's office.
Thank you. I will invite a member of the committee to move the following motion: that the agenda be approved as presented.
So moved.
Thank
I'll
you,
second.
Jean. And thank you, I think that was Trish. Or maybe Jamil. Whoever wants it. Okay, call for the question. All those in favor say aye or raise hands.
Aye.
Thank you. And any opposed say nay or raise your hands. Great, motion has been carried. Number 4, business arising out of the minutes. There is no business arising out of the minutes. So moving on to number 5, conflict of, or call for declaration of conflict of interests. I'll ask if anyone has a conflict of interest to declare as a result of an item on today's agenda. If anyone has that, please say so. I'm seeing none. So we will move on. Number 6, consideration of deferred business. There is none. Number 7, for correspondence, petitions, and delegations. To our clerk, has there been any correspondence received?
No correspondence has been received by the clerk's office, and for petitions, no petitions have been received.
Great, thank you. And there are no presentations as well. So moving on to items brought forward, also none. Moving on to number 9, reports and discussion. So for 9.1.1, active transportation transportation projects for Parkland Drive and Regency Park Drive. I'll invite Aaron Elridge, landscape architect, Greg O'Brien, and Brianna Reitzel to present. They're seeking feedback on the proposed design. At the end of the presentation, as a reminder, we'll go through the speakers list to provide any feedback. So just hold questions until the end, unless something is unclear about the presentation. And then I would say you could probably ask for clarification. So go ahead, Aaron, and I'm going to mute
Thanks,
myself.
Rochelle. And congratulations on your appointment as chair. I'm an active transportation planner with HRM, and I have Brianna Ritzel here from WSP. She's going to give you a presentation about this project. But to give you a brief overview, HRM is currently underway with the conceptual development and functional planning for bike lanes along Parkland Drive. Direction for this project comes out of the Making Connections report, the Active Transportation Priorities Plan from 2014 to 2019. And it identified Parkland Drive and Regency Park Drive as desired bikeways within the Clayton Park neighborhood. So the intent would be to create safer active transportation connections for residents to reach destinations within the corridor in the neighborhood, including Belcher's Marsh, the Canada Game Centre, the Keshen Goodman Library, and Halifax West High School. I will turn it over to Brianna now. She'll give you an overview of the presentation, and we'll both be available for questions after.
Awesome. I do not have the ability to share my screen unless...
It should be up there now. Is that appearing for everyone?
Oh yeah, I do see it. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. You can just let me know when you'd like me to move to the next slide.
Okay, perfect. Great. Hi everyone, I'm Brianna Ritzel. I am a transportation engineer in training, working on this project with my team at WSP. We are currently in the engagement stage for the project. So we are happy to get on this month's agenda and be able to get feedback from you guys. You can go to the next slide. Yeah, the goals of this meeting are to review the decisions that have been made so far during the concept development for the project, show the refined concept options, and get feedback from everyone on the AAC committee to include on the What We Heard reports and inform decisions for the project moving forward. And next slide. And the next one. So the objective of the project is to prepare an active transportation improvement functional design along Parkland Drive and Regency Park Drive between Carney Lake Road and Thomas Rattle Drive. Next slide. The existing conditions for this project are shown here. The study area corridor is about 3.8 kilometers long, and it is classed as a major collector. There is concrete sidewalk along both sides of the corridor and several connections to trails along it, and many bus stops along the street, as you can see from the image. The previous project was responsible for developing the concept options extended from Carney Lake Road in the north to Lacewood Drive in the south. So this stage of the project, we've extended it further down to Thomas Riddle Drive. There is parking along both sides of the street on most sections of the corridor, and one accessible space currently adjacent to Civic 323. There are also several Accessibus curb pickup and drop-off locations. And vehicle traffic on the road is in the range of 10,000 vehicles per day. This is based on turning movement count at the Lacewood Drive intersection done in 2024. So you can go to the next slide. So here's an overview of the scope of this project. So far, we've had our kickoff meeting, and we've developed a base map using topographic survey collected. We have refined some of the project concept areas to share, and we have had one discussion so far with the HRM technical committee. The upcoming next steps are our public engagement session, which we are squeezing in before the summer break, and that is this Wednesday, June 18th. And we'll also be presenting to the ATAC committee on Thursday. We will then draft 30% functional designs, taking the feedback from these meetings and the public engagement into account, and before finalizing the functional designs. So next slide. Perfect. Okay, so now I'll go over the options and the recommendations that came out of the previous concept design report that was done for the project area. So as you can see, the study area on the right-hand side of the screen extended only to just before the Lacewood Drive intersection for that stage of the project. So the first concept consisted of unidirectional on-street bike lanes protected by temporary concrete bollards with flexible green posts. Some positives of this option were that it serves both sides of the road and it fits within the existing curb-to-curb width. And some drawbacks were that it would remove the on-street parking along the street. Next slide. The second concept was a bidirectional bikeway on the east side of the road, also protected with temporary concrete bollards and flexible green posts. The east side was picked because it served the largest population catchment area and had more direct network connections. Some positives are that this option may provide some on-street parking along one side of the street, and there is space for cyclists to pass if no one is coming the other way. And some drawbacks are that it would be challenging to access to and from the bikeway from the west side of the street. Next slide. The third concept was a more permanent facility with raised unidirectional bike lanes. This would also serve both sides of the street and provide an enhanced facility. And modifying behind the curb would allow for on-street parking to remain on one side of the street. But the challenges with this option are feasibility with the relocation of existing curbs and associated drainage infrastructure. Next slide. So the preferred concept recommended in the concept design report was to install option 1 as an interim tactical solution with unidirectional bike lanes on either side of the road, as planned road work along Parkland Drive for 2025 is not full recapitalization. And ultimately, the preferred option may be more similar to option 3 with raised separated cycling facilities behind the curb. Next slide. So we made some refinements to the recommended concept option. Mainly, HRM wanted us to see if we could fit parking along one side of Parkland Drive with the unidirectional cycle lanes, using more accurate street widths that we had collected from our survey data. This is the typical cross section that was developed, and it allowed parking to remain on one side of the corridor after we determined that it could fit with the existing street width. We also continued the unidirectional cycle lanes past Lacewood Drive to Thomas Ferdal Drive along Regency Park Drive. So that made a major part of refining the concept to be, what do we do when we're crossing at Lacewood Drive? Next slide. So we came up with 3 options. I've only have option 1 and 2 in these slides, as we were still working on option 3 at the time, but I will do my best to describe it a little bit. So the 3 options that we have vary with increasing infrastructure impacts. We also extended the left turn lanes from Parkland Drive and Regency Park Drive onto Lacewood Drive for each of the option to accommodate those turning movement counts that we collected in 2024. You can go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is zoomed in to show the difference between the 2 options we have here. Option 1 has the cyclists separated from the roadway, and option 2 has them on the roadway, which is the main difference between these 2 options. The 3rd option that we are proposing that will be proposed at the public engagement session on Wednesday will be similar to what option 1 for the approaches at the intersection, but also have some smart channelized right turns to make the conflict between cyclists and vehicles shorter at the right turn channels. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. So an example of what option 1 could look like is what is existing at the McDonald Bridge. So I've shown a photo of it, which is shows the area where the cyclists would wait at the intersection, being separated from the roadway. And you can continue to the next slide. And yes, this is what would be option 2, what it could look like. This is not to scale, of course, just a rendering, but cyclists would be waiting in a tactical bollard area on approach to the intersection. Next slide. We also wanted to look at whether or not left turn lanes might fit in a couple of the larger intersections along the corridor within the existing curb-to-curb radius if we were to install bike lanes. These were at Langbrae Drive and Farnham Gate Road. So here is the typical cross-section of what that could look like. With the widths from the survey, we determined that both of these locations, a 3-meter wide left turn lane could fit, but with the use of some thinner concrete bollards for a short distance on both sides of the intersection, adjacent to where the left turn lanes are. This is the spacing is tight within the existing curb-to-curb width to fit this. So some of these widths are more minimum. So we also included a second option for left turn cross sections, which is shown in the next slide. Yeah, and this would just push into the existing buffer space to widen the lanes and be able to include more of what we wanted, but with more permanent infrastructure changes as opposed to tactical. And you can go to the next slide. Yeah, this is, these are the 2 intersections, Langbrae Drive and Farnham Gate Road. We had updated the cross sections since producing these 2 renderings earlier. So it says that there would be paint for a short section on the east side, but that we were able to modify the lane widths so that they would be protected behind the barriers. Next slide. Yeah, so our refined concept also included proposed changes for pedestrians in transit. We would make no changes to the sidewalk on either side of the road, but we propose 2 new pedestrian crossings. The existing ones are shown in black on the image, and the 2 new ones are shown in red. So you can see that right now there is a gap between Carney Lake Road and Farnham Gate Road without crosswalks. The proposed crossing at Heathside would provide access to the Little Belchers Pond Trail from the neighborhoods on the east side, and the one at Castle Park Grove would provide access to the Mainland North Trail. In terms of transit, we had proposed to consolidate some of the stops closer to the existing crosswalks and provide spacing that is concurrent with current HRM spacing standards. But this is still in review with the HRM transit team, and any changing of bus stops locations is to be determined. Yeah, next slide. So here is what the cross section is proposed to look like where there is a transit stop. We have a 2.8 meter wide pedestrian landing pad in past the bike lane into the roadway, which would be raised up. The bike lane would be raised up to curb height for the crossing. Yes, the rendering here doesn't show it, but in more details to come, it would include appropriate tactile indicators for the crossing zone. Next slide. So our next steps, I've kind of gone over it in the scoping section, but this week we are getting the engagement completed to hopefully produce our draft functional plans at the end of this month, and our final plans by the end of July. And yeah, that's all I got for the presentation part of things. Happy to hear any feedback on the project from any of the committee members. I'll do my best to answer any questions you may have as well. And if I don't know the answers, I'll have my colleague Cindy to record it and can find out the answers for you later. And Erin, do you have anything to add before we get into the discussion?
No, I think that was a great presentation, Brianna. I guess maybe for context, and maybe I should have prefaced with this, Brianna mentioned it in her presentation, but Parkland Drive has been identified for recapitalization in the upcoming couple of years. So that's the reason why we're bringing this project forward now. There's opportunity to be the most economically efficient around the addition of bike lanes to this corridor. And because it was identified in our active transportation priorities plan, we're bringing it forward to see if there's opportunity to include those here as part of that recapitalization.
Great. Thank you, Brianna, and thank you, Erin. So I have the speakers list here. I see your hand up, Anne, and I'm wondering if it's a question of clarification or if you don't mind waiting till your turn on the speakers list, which is number 3. So we're almost at you anyways.
Oh, thank you. This is Anne. I am happy to wait. It is a clarification, but if you want to go in order, no problem.
Cool. Thank you, Anne. All right. First on the speakers list is Celine. You're muted.
Of course I'm muted. Okay, all right, so I am disoriented. I'm like, oh my God. Okay, so the one thing about the presentation that did stand out to me was this, because I'm looking at the slide, that's why I'm looking that way. It's the option to what it could look like for the intersection at Park Lane at Lacewood intersection, where what I see, and it's hard to kind of bring it up because people can't see the picture, but the thing that concerns me is how cars are exiting out of a parking lot, and it's just, for me, it's the fact that you're going to have vehicles swerving to the right onto forgive me if I can't figure out the terminology right now, I'm stuttering, but I'm just so scared that when cars pull out of the exit of that parking lot and starts to gun it down, and they don't really, because a lot of drivers don't really have the concept of a bike lane, and some of them have a disdain of a bike lane. And I even see a picture of a truck, I just see a potential accident, because if they don't really see you and they gun out and they are ready to turn onto that curve, meanwhile you have like the bike lane that's crossing through that, it kind of concerns me personally. Like, as somebody who has cycled before, I'd be really afraid of having a car kind of like not really fully understanding that that is a bike lane in advance. Like, it's almost like there should be a sign at that exit, like bike lane ahead at the curve or something, like some sort of signage to give at least some bit of warning. But other than that, that's what stood out to me. Thank you.
Thanks,
Great.
Celine. Oh, sorry. Did you want to respond to that either? I think
Like,
Brianna.
if there was any concern about that possibility, it being
Yeah, it's good to think about. Yeah, definitely a possibility, and we can make note of having appropriate signage to make sure that drivers are aware and cyclists are aware that there is a conflict point, and yeah.
conflict point. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Celine. Okay, next on the speakers list is Nick Harris.
Perfect, thank you. Excuse me. One of my questions was, and I think I heard this, but I might have misheard, that there was an accessible spot on the road that would be removed as part of this recapitalization. Was that correct, or did I mishear that?
There is one accessible spot currently, and depending, the typical cross section is proposed to keep parking on one side of the road, so that will be taken into consideration for the location where the accessible space is, and potential to add more accessible spaces if desired as well. So not necessarily taken away.
Great. So yeah, I just had a question about that, and just in terms of how access looks for those accessible spots when you add the bike lanes in as well, and how do they cross over the temporary kind of concrete pads and things. Like, I'm assuming that there's a standard for what it looks like when you add accessible spots into parking, but just a consideration with the parking is, how do people get from the street to the sides of the street or wherever they're going? Obviously adding concrete and bollards and whatever does impact mobility and accessibility for folks. So just putting that out there for parking to consider. It might be worthwhile adding more accessible spots or cross points as well. And I know crosswalks were mentioned, but just thinking about that is, how do we access those spots, whether people excuse me, have access to accessible parking passes, or whether they don't have that infrastructure. Just thinking about the larger kind of like universal design of how people are using that kind of parking space. So just wanted to make that mentioned. And then the other one was just a mention about the bus stops moving. And I think it was referenced that obviously Halifax Transit is involved in that, and has kind of somewhat final say, or a big component in the say of that. But just something to consider of how far that distance is, because if someone relies on that spot for taking the bus and it is now moved, X number of feet or what have you, that can significantly impact people's commute and transit as well. So I think it sounded like they were moving within the guidelines of how far spots are, but just again, putting that out there from the accessibility perspective of if you are moving those spots and combining and reducing spots, there is a thought process of like, how does that person get from the old spot to the new spot? What does that look like actually, like in the physical environment? So yeah, just putting those thoughts out there. And that's all for me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Okay, number 3 on the list, Anne Sinclair.
Thank you. This is Anne. Yeah, thank you for that presentation. It was great to see all the concepts and the process. And my question for clarification is about the sidewalk widths. It looked like in your first existing slide, or one of the early slides showed the existing sidewalk on the northbound side is 2.5 meters wide. And in what I thought was the scheme that you're proposing, I think it was reduced to 1.5. And is that true? Because the latest CSA recommendation, their standard is increased to 1.6 as a minimum. And our building code, which doesn't exactly comply with this, but they apply to sidewalks, but it applies to exterior routes at buildings, is also increased to 1.6. So if that sidewalk is existing at 2.5 and it's proposed to go down to 1.5, then I think that's going a step backwards.
Yeah, we are not proposing to reduce any of the sidewalk widths. Maybe those two were for different cross sections of the existing width. I'm not exactly sure what the existing sidewalk widths are for the entire corridor, but we will not be reducing them.
Okay, so that early slide that said 2.5, that wasn't correct, or?
I can speak to that. So I think those cross sections are representing two different sections of the corridor. To the northern end of the corridor, the mainland trail connects into the sidewalk up to Kearney Lake Road. So in that section, the existing sidewalk on the east side of the road is 2.5 because it's aligning with the multi-use trail or pathway there. But in areas south of that, along the rest of the corridor, the sidewalk on both sides is 1.5. So I think that cross-section is maybe a little bit misleading in that it's representing that north cross-section, which is a little bit unique. I think that condition exists for maybe a couple hundred meters of the corridor, but the sort of general standard within the rest of the corridor is 1.5 meter width on the sidewalks. And right now, the proposed plan is maintaining those as is, because the intention is not to do any work outside of the existing curb to curb width.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Great, thank you. Moving on to Jamil Sino.
Hey there. So I do have a couple of questions with regards to the bollards being introduced to Parkland Drive. Towards the north end of Parkland Drive, there is a fairly steep hill that takes a fairly sharp turn around where the Holiday Inn is. I think it's that hotel. How does that affect cyclists and safety in comparison to like the rest of the route? And is that a consideration when introducing these options?
We have not taken that into consideration as of yet in the concept stage. But as the design progresses, we'll have to look at what that will look like with a sharp curve and sharp steepness.
My next question then is, I think, well, I'm familiar with the area. I actually grew up on Parkland Drive, and I noticed traffic has only increased since, and many people did rely on having to use street parking for, just parking their cars because lack of other forms of parking. How many vehicles are currently being used or currently using this side of the roads as parking, and how does that affect them with these, especially if we're going to reduce it from both sides to one side? How does that affect those users of the road?
Yeah, I mean, there are sections with no parking, and there are sections with parking on both sides along the whole street. We plan to ask from the public which sections have the most desire to keep parking on which side of the road. And the sides of the road can vary depending on which sections need it most, but there is pretty fair utilization of the existing parking along Parkland Drive.
So I guess like a question is for this is when we think about introducing sections for just bicycles, what about the implementation that is around Citadel Hill, between Citadel Hill and where the stable is, where there aren't any concrete bollards, but there are, I guess, pylons is what you would call them, but there are separations between a bike lane and the car lanes that are separated by those big orange like dividers, really. I wonder this because Parkland is a fairly long street, and I noticed specifically between Langbrae and Farnham Gate, there are not many crosswalks that are going to be introduced, one at Langbrae and one at Farnham Gate, or the intersection of those two streets. And for those who may require mobility aids or use, other forms of assistive technologies, how does that affect them having, if there's concrete bollards introduced now separating like Parkland from the crosswalks or sidewalks, sorry.
Right.
Do you see a necessity to introduce maybe some more sidewalks, maybe partially in between those two routes? Because I think the difference in distance is about like 700 meters to a kilometer, and asking people to take that extra like distance for transportation or to cross the road is sometimes requesting a lot of people.
Right. Yes, we'll can take that into consideration. Yep.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Jamil. All right, moving on to Councillor Laura White.
Hi. Okay. I'm looking at this. I guess my first question, I'm not super familiar with the road itself, but I've cycled out this way by using the Mainland Common Engineer Trail. So my first question is kind of, how does this interact with that? Why go here versus using the trail? That's my first question.
Yeah, do you want to speak to that one, Erin?
Sure, I can speak to that one. So the two will intersect at the north end of Parkland Drive, where the Mainland Trail kind of, again, where we're talking about that wider section of sidewalk. The two will have a linkage there within the existing corridor.
Sorry, what road is that? Were they?
Oh, on Parkland Drive.
Yeah.
The Mainland Trail kind of comes into Parkland Drive at an angle towards almost at Kearney Lake Road. So there will be a connectivity there between the two facilities. It is a good point. We've definitely had that question too, I think, from the public, from some initial feedback around sort of why this, especially because it runs parallel. Again, we're putting this forward as part of the recapitalization. It was identified in the active transportation priority plan. So this is kind of that milestone to say, if we want to go forward with bike lanes, this is a great time to do it. It's the most economically efficient way of doing it, but it will also provide, I think, like a different form of connection, whereas the Mainland Trail, it's not lit, it's not paved. This provides kind of an all-season accessible route within the street corridor and kind of adjacent to those key destinations that are right on Parkland Drive or Regency Park Drive. And we can kind of take advantage of the on-street lighting as well. So you kind of have that all season, and maybe we can cycle here at different times of day. So there might be some considerations around accessibility or user comfort within the corridor at certain times of the year.
Okay, I can see them sort of complementing each other. So things to think about there. I'll keep going with my question. Okay, 3.6 meter lanes. I think I saw that in one. Is that the most narrow you can go with the bus route? Like I know 3 meters is the most narrow you can go in general, but I saw some of the car width of the lanes are 3.6. Is that because there's buses there, or can that go?
Yes, it is, and also there's minimum widths for lanes adjacent to curb. So the concrete bollards for the bike lane is curb, and though I think 3.5 or 3.6 may be the minimum for
right next to
those.
the curb.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this question is about going to, it sounds like your first recommendation is tactical first and upgrade to concept 3, the built-in later. My question is about what are the duplications of cost there when you have the intention to go to a built-in design later? What do you spend twice because you do it tactically first?
I can take this one, Brianna. So there's no intention to upgrade to the sort of concept 3 level. The intention would be that the majority of the corridor would be just the precast curb and flexible bollard. And then at perhaps those major intersections like Farnham Gate and Langbray, depending as WSP's team kind of reviews those widths and the details around that cross-section design, there may be a need to have a more permanent facility around that to accommodate the left-hand turn lane, so that we're getting that safe and protected cycling lane, as well as the widths we need for traffic flow and traffic movement. So that would only be kind of in maybe small sections of the corridor, but the rest of the corridor would be just that precast curb and bollard style with no immediate or planned upgrade to like an off-street sort of protected raised cycle lane.
Okay, so when you say that it's due for recapitalization, do you mean a full dig out of the road or just a little bit?
It's like a milling and repaving.
Right,
Yeah.
so it's not an opportunity to move curbs.
No. The only sort of instance of curb relocation would be around the transit stops to ensure that they're fully accessible.
Okay. All right. My last question is, intersections are so important with making cycling safe. And at first I thought you had a protected intersection here because I see the 4 slabs, but it's not. I just feel like this is an opportunity to do a protected intersection, but instead we've left 4 slip lanes. It's just really dangerous to bike across a slip lane. Was it ever considered to make this a protected intersection?
Yeah, the option we're working on that wasn't shown is kind of the most impact to infrastructure that would have more of a protected intersection, but I think the options that we're showing for the purposes of this project are easier to implement, more quick win type implementations, and that maybe as a future project could look more deeply into the crossing of the intersection and the traffic impacts of that as a whole.
Okay, last question. I know. Was there any modeling to be done, traffic modeling around doing a protected intersection? Like how?
No, not.
You didn't go that far. Okay.
No.
Okay. I really hesitate with this intersection. It is not looking safe to me at all. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Laura. Next up is Councillor Jean Saint-Amand.
Thank you. The only question that I had really is similar in nature, I guess, to what Councillor White asked about, just maybe from a different angle. Like, I'm curious to know how the recapitalization, what the recapitalization within that area would commonly look like. I mean, you referred to, taking off that top layer and putting down new asphalt. That's a very, very wide roadway compared to most. I mean, it puts us in an enviable position of being able to do at least some of these comparatively tactical items because it's so wide. So, does that present arguably a cost opportunity in the fact that this roadway just happens to be a little bit wider? And so if we were putting down a new surface across that entire width, the addition of that protected lane is made a little bit easier because we don't wind up having to dig down into the ground in order to be able to put down a base layer of gravel and so forth in order to support at least that piece of it.
Yeah, I mean, anytime we can pair construction projects together, it's going to be, I think, more efficient from a resident's point of view, where we're only coming in once to disturb traffic, and also just from a kind of cost perspective as well. In terms of the overall construction impacts, I think because it's fairly tactical, like this is, like you mentioned, sort of a quick win around being able to pair this with the upcoming proposed recapitalization. I think where we can see cost savings is around where we would have to do a little bit more work around the transit stops to ensure that they're accessible across the cycling lanes. So that's why we're interested in kind of moving the two forward together if possible. And if approved by council, this still has to go to council for review and approval. But that's kind of where the cost savings would be. I think there will be some minimal curb replacement along the corridor as well, but the primary scope of the recapitalization is just resurfacing.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Moving on, Councillor Trish Purdy.
Thank you very much. So I just had a question of clarification before I share two concerns that I saw, but on one of the slides where it showed all the transit stops, the 24-hour TMC at the Lacewood intersection, what does TMC stand for?
That's turning movement count. So counting the traffic volumes at the intersection.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so I saw two potential areas of conflict. One was with the transit stop with the bike lane there. So pedestrians would have to cross the bike lane to wait at the transit stop, and just, well, there wouldn't be any barrier there. So people standing in the bike lanes, like it could just be some potential conflict happening there. And also, the road is narrowed to allow for the active transportation on either side. So there's no place for cars to kind of like pull out in front of the transit, the buses. And I counted 16 transit stops on one side of the street and 15 on the other. So, I mean, they've done this in streets in my district, and people are kind of upset that they can't, scooch around when it's clear to be able to do so, and it can add quite some time onto people's commutes when you have to stop and wait. So just wanted to flag those things just from my own experience over the last few years of things that increased frustration.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Trish. Next up is Kathy Stevenson. No, we can't hear you for some reason, Kathy. How about, maybe try to fiddle around with some stuff. I'll go to the next speaker and then type it in the chat and I'll read it out if the microphone situation is not working. Okay, so hopefully it'll get figured out in the amount of time before we'll come back to you. Okay, next up is Oliver Key.
Thanks, Rochelle. I just had a couple questions, and I'm sorry if they're a bit repetitive. I believe you mentioned consultation process. Just confirming that I heard that right. There was a consultation process for this. Did I understand that correctly?
We are having a public engagement on Wednesday.
Public engagement on Wednesday? Okay. I guess I'm kind of curious, and this is more of a curiosity question on these projects more broadly, but I am wondering what disaggregated data is collected to measure how people with disabilities currently use these projects and how they shape the final design. And this doesn't necessarily have to be with this project in specific, but I am curious in broader projects.
Yeah, do you have any information about that, Erin?
I don't, but that's maybe something I can come back to the committee with or have a response. That might be something I can ask of my supervisor. If that data is tracked, like you're sort of looking at it like pre and post construction, Oliver, is that fair?
Yep,
yeah, so
that's go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, we certainly engage with this committee and other like key parties through the process, kind of depending on the project context. I know CNIB is often one of our interested parties that participates in some of our engagement. But I can follow up on the sort of post-construction piece. I know we get feedback from the community, but I'm not sure if that's formally tracked and how that, I know that we take that feedback and kind of integrate it into our next project and lessons learned, but if there's a formal process for that, I can confirm.
Yeah, that would be great, actually, because my follow-up is we have struggled with snow removal and sidewalks in the past as something that has been an accessibility issue before. And I was curious to know if there was a pre-evaluation and consultation process and then a post-construction evaluation user experience audit that would somehow loop in how disabilities function within these new developments, particularly with the construction process, these new accessible or active transport lanes, and particularly snow. So if you do have any more information on that, I would appreciate if that could be feedback to us. And then my only other comment is to reiterate what Councillor White had said about this intersection. I agree. I also am quite nervous about slip lanes. I think often they sacrifice a degree of safety for an increase in vehicle speed. And for those who do have accessibility challenges, slip lanes do pose the degree of danger. So I'd just like to reiterate, Councillor White. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Oliver. Okay, I'm going to read Kathy Stevenson's message in the chat. So I was just going to comment on slide 22 out of 25. They're not numbered, so not 100% sure. There's a lack of crosswalks across lanes near the bus stop. Oh, I see. So I think, right. So like in the, maybe that's slide 21. On my thing, it looks like it's 21, but that I'm assuming that like long route of where all the bus stops are and where all the crosswalks are, that they're not really close to each other. So that would, yeah, I think, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong about that, Kathy. Okay, I'm next on the speakers list. I feel really like strongly also about some of the things Oliver's talking about with like the post thing evaluation. I feel like that like is probably getting missed quite a bit. So actually finding out how similar projects are faring in the areas that they are. Like some of this project, the way it's set up is reminding me of like South Park Street in like one very specific area, and actually most of South Park Street, I guess, at least when I'm driving on it. So I'm wondering, like, how is South Park Street faring right now? Is it going good? That would be very useful information to know about. Yeah, leading up to actually, like, destroying the roads, and, well, not destroying, but drilling into things and doing the whole spiel. I think in general, I'm pretty, like, pro concrete Ballard. From cyclists that I know, they feel much safer when they have, like, an actual strip of something that stops cars from just veering into them. But I also know that those pose quite an issue for people trying to just, like, walk across the street. And people will try to cross those Ballards if there isn't, like, a good spot for a crosswalk. People will just walk across the street where there's no crosswalk and then maybe get injured. Because I mean, I'm disabled and I'm stubborn and I love to cross the street in inappropriate places, even though I shouldn't. So yeah. I think, did I have one more thing I was gonna say? Oh, and then just in terms of, like, setting up parking and when you're thinking about putting accessible spots in and making sure that those are accessible, I think, like, in general, all parking spots should be somewhat accessible. From that universal design perspective, I think Anne was talking about that. So people who don't have an accessible pass also deserve an accessible parking spot, because, they could have a temporary mobility issue, or not all of us get the pass, or the spots with the passes are used. So I guess, yeah, when thinking about, like, what parking spots are being put in, just making sure that all of them are essentially barrier free and not just the ones that have the little mark on them. Oh, and then in the chat, Jamila is saying, like, can the Ballards have breaks every 2 meters or so? That's a great idea, I think. Cool. That's all for my thoughts. I don't know if they were questions or just comments. But I see, Laura, you have your hand up, and so I'll sort of, like, go ahead, Laura, and then I think maybe we'll close off on this unless anyone else has something really pressing that they need to say. So go ahead, Laura.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on South Park, and perhaps relieve one of Councillor Purdy's concerns. The bike lane that kind of goes up and over the bus stops, it's pretty good. Like, you just kind of ring your bell if anyone's there, and you slow down and make eye contact. It's person to person, so it's not too much of a conflict there. But just for the designers, I would really make sure that those ups and downs are gradual and comfortable for people cycling, because if they're a big thud, it's not desirable, and the last thing we want to do is build bike lanes that no one uses. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Brianna and Aaron. I think we're good to go on this one, and we'll move on to our next item of business. So thanks again for being here to present to us.
Thank you for your feedback, everybody.
Cool. All right, so next on the agenda, item 9.1.2, discussion of the 2025 annual town hall. I'm going to invite, it looks like, Oliver, you have a question, and then we'll move on. Go ahead, Oliver.
Sorry, Rochelle, sorry.
Okay.
I just had a question on follow-up. The conversation made me a little nervous, to be completely transparent. I was wondering if there's any way there could be any form of follow-up on the commentary that was taken. It would be personally interesting to see what was considered and, frankly, what wasn't, and why. So I would like to make at least a point, if this development does go through, if the minutes could in some degree be compared to these type of developments, and how we could use that productively in the future. Yeah.
That's a great point, Oliver. Thank you. And I see Elizabeth nodding, but I don't know if you want to answer anything out loud or just nod away and write down the notes.
I can definitely capture it in the minutes. That being said, that definitely is more of a high level overview of the points that were said in terms of the specifics of what ends up being included in the project. I don't know if are the staff in WSP staff still in the meeting?
I think they took off.
Oh, they okay.
Yeah.
I could send an email to Aaron to ask if there's kind of a more, I guess, Cindy, is WSP, I believe. And I
Right.
see Cindy has her hand up.
Perfect.
Yeah, thanks. Go ahead, Cindy. We can't hear you if you're trying to speak.
Cindy, are you able to hear us?
Oh, mic not working in the chat there.
Oh, okay. I see that. Okay. I will follow up with Aaron in that case and see if, I don't know if there's any options, I guess, for committee members to maybe follow up with HRM staff.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Afterwards. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Elizabeth. And sorry, Rochelle.
No, all good. You're good. That was a great point. Okay. So into 9.1.2. Oh, and Cindy in the chat just said, I will certainly take that comment with me. I can request that information to my team as well. Thank you. Thank you, Cindy. Okay. Oh, and I see Anne, you also have your hand up.
Hi, yes,
Okay.
thanks. This is Anne. Yeah, can we request that WSP sends in the correspondence form to our committee a summary of the items that they heard from us?
Sorry, just requesting a summary from WSP in terms of what feedback they received today.
Yes.
Okay. Yep. I can certainly request that.
And then and I guess the idea is that then when we do see the final or the next step or whatever happens next with them, then we can compare it to the issues that were raised and see if they were addressed. Just speaking more
Further
about
follow
to
up with WSP on the final project, or if it does pass what's okay. Yep.
Great.
Thanks.
Cool. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Melissa Myers to speak on the memo that was distributed about the town hall so that we can talk about planning more.
Thank you, Rochelle. You're doing a good job. Okay. So nice to see everyone today. I hope everyone got the memo. Elizabeth circulated earlier. So there was great conversation at the last meeting about the town hall, so we really appreciate that. Within the memo that was circulated, there's a couple of things that I'm hoping that the committee can kind of discuss tonight. So at the last meeting, we discussed who would present kind of at the panel, which is great. But before Elizabeth and I reach into business email, I think it's important that we also discuss what business units we might want to have a booth. So then that way when we do reach out to business units, we can do it all at the same time. So that is kind of one aspect that I'm hoping at least tonight we can talk about the event being hybrid and just giving some more information on that, on how that was done in the past. And then just the general order of what you would like to see the event look like. So like order, meaning do we want to do the panel presentation first, which might make more sense, and open it up that people can go to the different groups afterwards, or do we want to have it by first? So that can be kind of a conversation. And I'm always go to the board. So Rochelle, I'll hand it back over to you to share.
Great. Thanks, Melissa. Yeah, so I actually typed out, in case folks didn't have access to the memo right away, these are the specific things that we are supposed to figure out today. So I'm gonna go through this speakers list to start. And then if there's any need for clarification, I feel like I can also answer some questions about past years, but I also don't want to take up too much space while I'm chairing because I feel like I'm worried that I will. If we want to start off with I should also say we did confirm, Celine and I confirmed that the Accessibility Directorate could be in attendance as one of the booths. So that's already been chosen. So we will have provincial representation this year. Woohoo! And the Accessibility Directorate are awesome. So they're doing some cool work. So that's kind of been confirmed in terms of one of the booths. So thank you mainly to Celine for doing that because I was just CC'd on the emails and saw that they happened. So on the speakers list, first up, we have Oliver Keith, if you want to start us off.
Ooh. I don't have a ton to add as of yet, to be honest. When I read it, I wasn't entirely sure where to start, to be completely fair. So I can pass it on to someone who knows a bit more than me. And if I have more developing thoughts, I can add from there.
Cool. We will come back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Rochelle.
No problem. All right. Next on the list is Celine.
Okay. For myself, like I find having like people coming in to the space, having the booths already ready to be interacted with as like just before the panel would go on, and then after the panel goes through, then we would have that opportunity for people to want to catch up even further with the booths afterwards. So I really kind of feel like there's more conversation to be had before and after. Sometimes people could come and interact with a business unit, have their say or so, and then hear their presentation and maybe something else pops up, right? Because sometimes when you only have like a couple of minutes to speak with someone, you don't get to really cover everything that you want. Sometimes you'll walk away and you realize it's like afterwards that there was something else that you wanted to add, or something that they said during the presentation. You realize, oh, okay, like you know what I mean? You get to catch up. So that would be how I would personally see it. So what are the key things that we're looking at too? Because have to low-key admit that there's a couple of things that I don't know what else are we supposed to be looking at, because I know we started about talking about the order of whether or not we have panel first, booth after.
Yeah, so the order of events, the like which business units we want represented at the booths, and then any like formatting of like the Q&A period, if there's going to be one, layout of the event space, which I feel like, well, I mean, anyways, that's what we're looking at. I will wait till it's my turn to talk before I start having opinions.
No, it's okay. And I think too in this meeting it's a bit difficult to kind of like the other presentations to follow through on all the lists. So I don't think it's a bad thing to have this interaction with you, Rochelle. The one business unit for myself, like as an advocate, like my bias is like I'm really a lot about community safety, because it just kind of covers a lot of different bases for me. And even just 311 customer service, like that's the other one that I'm kind of like looking forward to, if they can kind of present on what are the key concerns that they constantly receive, like from the general public.
Great.
So,
Okay.
and yeah, I'm gonna hear everybody else out. Maybe I'll have something else to add. I mean, obviously, confirming that this event is a hybrid, of course. Like like what I've seen from November 2023, I saw a lot of good. I think it's great, and I feel like this committee are going to be able to add more to what technical components would be an improvement for what's coming up in November.
Right. Thanks, Celine. Cool. All right, next up is Nick Harris.
Awesome, thank you. And I saw that there was some chat going on as well. And yeah, I do think, just to comment to Melissa's thing about the business units on the panel also having booths, I think that that's a great idea. I think having that opportunity to engage in different manners. So not just in the Q&A, but having the booth space for different people accessing that how they would like to, I think is a great way to be able to kind of flow through the event. I'm not sure if there are any additional business units that would have booths only, but yeah, I think the business units on the panel having booths at the site also makes a ton of sense for me. First rodeo for for this kind of an event for me from this council. So I haven't seen fully how it's been done in the past, but I do like the idea of kind of like booths sandwiching the panel, again, allowing people having the opportunity to engage how they want to and how they feel might spur their kind of their interests or conversation. Things might build from that. And then in terms of kind of the hybrid format, again, not fully specific or aware of how things were done in the past, but the way I have seen things done is, having someone moderating the online and in-person space so that if people are submitting questions online, which I think would be very important to be able to collect questions from people who are joining virtually, whether that's using like a Zoom platform and a Q&A function, whether that's monitoring the chat, what have you. I think someone needs to be monitoring that space for questions that come in digitally. Just thinking about access to those outside of HRM or who can, maybe not make it physically that day. It'd be great to be able to capture some of the questions and have some moderation of that space. And again, I don't know if that was done before. So just kind of putting it out there that it would be great not only to consider the voices of people who are in the room, but make sure that, we're not just streaming it for people to join virtually, but they can actually engage, especially if it is kind of that Q&A format. So having someone moderating or monitoring those submissions and having a process that's very clear and simple to submit that, that would be great. And yeah, I think I already mentioned the order of events as well. So I kind of went a little bit all over the place, but that's all I have for right now.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. And I can confirm that the online participants also have an opportunity for being part of the Q&A. Usually it's a like 1-for-1, so like an in-person question and then an online question, and it just keeps going back and forth for some specified length of time. So in case anyone else was also concerned about that, there is a participatory opportunity for online folks as well. All right, who are we at now? Anne Sinclair.
Thank you. This is Anne. I also don't have too much to offer about the event planning in general, not being my forte. But I like all the suggestions so far, including business units at the booths. And so thinking about the booths, I had a question about how do we do ASL? So it's possible that people will come and they will have an interpreter with them from the public side, but in answer from the staff side, I'm not sure what can be done about that. I don't remember how many booths we're talking. I guess that's a decision to be made today. But if there could be an available ASL person, who could be summoned. That's not the most ideal, but I think we should think about it. Thanks.
Excellent point. I also have some thoughts about that. Thanks, Anne. All right, next up is Jamil Sino.
I was just thinking about the business representation at the booths. I think really what we should try and the way I would like to see it is probably make the focus the panel first, and then have people take the discussions that happen at the panels to go then and talk to the booths that are present at the event. And so I think with that in mind, it might be helpful to minimize interruptions. So some people might already be engaged in conversation, and good conversation, if we are going to start the event by having like an explore, and then we will go to the Q&A section, and then we will allow people to explore again. I think that does interrupt conversations a lot, and meaningful conversations usually don't get picked up again afterwards. Sometimes they do, there might be some follow-up, but it's usually tough. So I think if we can prioritize panels and Q&A earlier and then allow people to go and explore afterwards, it might be helpful. I know that there might be some times where people are unable to attend the very beginning of the meeting or the event in general because of other prior just life. And so, not first thing, but like fairly early on. The next thing that I'm thinking is with regards to specific details of the hybrid event. I think there is a platform that I like using, but I don't know what the city's requirements are for these platforms. But Slido allows for people to submit questions and others to thumbs them up, really, if many people agree with the question or they want to hear the question answered. And so if we are going to allow for a Q&A section for both in-person and hybrid, doing like a one-on-one sort of, or a few questions in person, a few questions online, and that you select that are the most voted upon. And that way it also encourages people who are online to sort of participate in the event. And then general order of events, I guess I really started off with that, but I think those are just my thoughts. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Jamil. Next up, Councillor Laura White.
Hi, I don't have too much to add, just other than would it make sense to have a set time frame that the online event is taking place and then people can sign off and then that's when all the booth work happens. But
That's a great idea. Yeah, thank you. Perfect. Thank you. Next up is Councillor Jean Saint-Amand.
Thank you, Rochelle. The suggestions from Jamil are bang on. We saw that done very well when we were in Ottawa just a couple weeks ago for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. There were a multitude of sessions that were done as workshops wherein, granted, there wasn't an online, like there wasn't a remote participant component to it, but it could have easily been either way. Because there was simply a unique URL that you visited and you could submit a question. And in the particular utilization that was in place for these workshops, the questions were anonymized, so that, if you weren't interested in asking your question in front of your peers, then you could do so anyway. And the questions were democratized to an extent because, as Jamil pointed out, you can have the option turned on where you can vote up the questions, and therefore the moderators are free to cherry pick whatever they want to answer, but they can also use the feedback from the participants both online and in the room that are all participating on their mobile devices to vote up and vote down questions, and therefore bring attention to the questions that are seen as being important enough to vote up and therefore should get answered. So there may be some really interesting opportunities to have that hybrid blend and the in-person blend all take place during the panel. It could really add quite a bit of interest and energy to the way that the event is run by taking that approach. And whether it's Slido or an alternative to that platform really just comes down to what, as Jamil mentioned, what the requirements are for the municipality around privacy and access controls and everything that goes along with that. But I think that's an excellent way to enhance the event further.
Great, thank you. Moving on to Councillor Trish Purdy.
Thank you. So Jamil had it. I think that was awesome to have the panel first. That's how I envision it too. Panel first, Q&A, the online and the in-person, and then maybe that's when then people can have snacks, and then people can break up and go to the booths to have like one-on-one conversations or group conversations with the folks, and then that way people who want to leave can grab a snack and leave, or maybe that's when the online folks can be shut down too. So that seems like a good flow. And the on the panel, will the business unit folk have presentations to present to us like they do in other years, or is it just going to be Q&A? Like, will they be able to speak for however many minutes each just to share what's been going on in the last year and what their priorities are and maybe concerns that they're seeing, and then the Q&A happen? And I noticed Melissa mentioned how many tables are available. Does that include a table for food and drink, or is that just tables for the business unit? And I think that's all my feedback.
Cool. Thanks. And Melissa, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councilor Purdy. So the tables would just be for the panel, for the group start, so that we have other tables for the group that would be in another location. As for your first question, I kind of thought it similar as before, that business units would come and provide the update. In terms of accessibility related to the business unit, and then we would open that up to the floor. Typically, how we did it in the past is we go 1-for-1, meaning we would take a question on the floor, and then we would take a question online to people online, so we kind of rotate it back and forth that way, so everyone had a fairly equal opportunity to have a question. And then the other thing we also did was, if people didn't feel comfortable asking questions, we also had paper where people, there was like a table where people could go and write their question, and I believe the clerk's office at that time collected those questions, and then we made sure that those questions went out to the appropriate business unit to reply as well. So we provided different methods for folks that ask those questions.
Perfect. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Trish and Melissa. Moving on to Kathy Stevenson, although I do recall that your mic wasn't working before. I don't know if there was. Oh, yeah, we can hear you now. Hooray.
I actually have and it's Eastlink. I just keep now I'm getting messages from them saying that I'm being reconnected, and gotta love Eastlink. Sorry. But I'm listening. You're trying to. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, awesome. All right. I am next on the speakers list. So I tried to take some notes so that I would be somewhat succinct. I also was also under the impression that we would have like a panel where the business units present their like 5-minute update on what they've been doing for the past year that was generally accessibility focused. And then there would be the Q&A period, and then we'd sort of have like a break where the booths can get set up if we need that larger space, and then the booths happen. And then maybe we bring out the food at that point too, because I have found in past years when the food is just like there when people are talking, it's very distracting because people are just kind of like going in and out, and they get to the food table, they start chatting. It's very distracting. So I was thinking it would be good to sort of like house it at that point. In terms of the number of booths that we have, so we have 8 booths, 6 business units. I think having I think having them repeated in the booths as well is going to be useful, so that people who didn't have their questions answered during the Q&A can actually just go to their booth and ask their questions individually if they felt comfortable doing that. And if not, we do have that like paper form option that Melissa had talked about. We usually have invited Parks and Recreation to talk about their inclusion stuff. And this year we haven't included them on the panel, mainly because I have talked to them and they said that there's like never any questions for them, because I know the people who do the inclusion stuff, but I do think it would be useful to have them there in general. And so I thought they could be one of the booths. And then the last booth essentially would be the accessibility directorate because we've already invited them. So that's kind of who I pictured making up the booths. But of course, like that's just my thought. But I would like to have Parks and Recreation there because I think they do a lot of good work. They just don't really get any questions because usually it's in the middle of November and people are more concerned about camps and stuff when it's closer to the warm weather. What else did I write here? Oh, for the ASL at like the booth fair, I mean, we'll have the interpreters that are already here I think usually there's 2 or 3 that come for the event for like the larger part of the event. And then I think it would make sense to maybe hire a couple extra for that night who can, be close to the booths and see if somebody's requiring it and then kind of like step into that role. If that's the appropriate way to utilize ASL interpretation, I think we should also look into that. In terms of like best practices when it comes to these sort of like open floor spaces. Yeah, and then what else did I say in this? Oh, that was it. Great. That was all my thoughts. So I'm going to turn it back over to the speakers list and see if anybody has any other thoughts or any responses to other people's thoughts in general. And first up is Oliver Keith.
Sorry, I have nothing to add. I think the comments have been great. I'm kind of in the same boat, not a great planner.
All good. There's, I think, lots of planners on this committee, so sometimes it's nice to just sit back and take in the information. Celine, you're next.
Yeah. So like I can see that most people are, I can understand that panel first, question, Q&A after, and then, but the thing for me is even on a question of timing, because like, again, if we do have space before like the main event, right, when people are coming in and settling in, finding a place to sit, etc. It's just maybe for some people it would be of their own convenience that there would be a chance before to be able to see the booths as well, because I know that we all can take for granted that we know who these business units are, but I don't think a lot of members of the public know who these business units are. And coming from a place where cognitively, sometimes some of us need to process, oh, okay, this is it. We need to kind of process what we have for a question, right? Because when it's just like then and there, sometimes a lot of us end up going home going, oh, crap, I would have asked this question, but I didn't have enough substantial time. Because sometimes if you're coming to an event and you're not fully informed about what will be at this event, sometimes you will be stuck on words or stuck on something that you wanted to approach. So sometimes, I don't know, I just feel like having a pre-interaction before the panel. And so this is kind of where it's my bias. And another thing too is like, let's say, for example, somebody has something scheduled at a certain time, like at 8 o'clock, they got to jet out, right? It would give an opportunity for everybody to kind of have that say. The other thing too that I wanted to bring up, okay, yeah, so let's say, for example, one of the business units are like, we're totally okay about having a panel presentation, but we don't really see the point of a booth or so. And then now we're down to like one other, because I do agree with you having rec, if they want to come up with the booth, I think that's wonderful. I think that really, really works. But one thing, just as an idea, because I know that sometimes I come up with ideas and we're like, no, we don't do this. But anyway, what about if we do have space, we have one extra booth that we invite, because we invited a provincial representative, but why not ask if we can have a community representative, like an advocacy group, as for example, the Disability Rights Coalition. That would be kind of nice, because like having an advocacy piece, because like accessibility directorate is the justice piece, and then having the advocacy, having one community booth where they're talking about disability rights. That's just a suggestion I like to throw out there. The other thing too, because, and this is more on the technical, is also too, like on questioning, are we opening up the Paula Regan Hall? Because I know that we are talking a lot about how we have it completely enclosed for the sake of better audio quality. However, I could point to some links to some events from the Paul Regan Hall where audio wasn't really a problem, and these were big, high, like, productions. Is just my biggest, again, concern. And I've know that some people, and I understand the meaning of having only one entrance, you know, that everyone uses the same entrance. I really appreciate that. It's just some of us who are on the claustrophobic side, having that feeling that you're going to go into the entrance. And I've already been to Paul Regan shows where it's much more public when you need to leave. So, and then going up or so, right? And then some of us maybe cannot handle being in there for a certain amount of time and feel like they need to leave to have a break, need to get away. So I find like, and I've noticed in the past month, I did take a picture, I could email it to you, but it's just there is like some paneling, at least to give some chance to contain the sound within the room, but still have an opening. So also too, because again, like, I know maybe I'm the one who's sappy about it, but I would love to have it where members of the public who were not even planning to join this event end up walking into this event. Because again, I feel like the general public are not as aware of disability topics. And I feel like having a full enclosure, it just continues on. That is just some niche topic that not everybody else is, because I really feel like the public should feel like they have to be part of it too. You know, so people at the library, especially because it's going to be on Wednesday at that time, chances are it could be a really busy time, especially in November, from what I'm used to, because I'm at the library a lot of the times. And just a last question I have, and it's kind of like a little outside of this topic, but I remember months ago, like in January, February, when we were really starting with the bones of the event, I had mentioned, given we have 16 library locations, will the proposal of 16, like 15 watch parties, like having the different locations, will there still be something happening at these locations? So to at least expand on more regional topics, to expand more on the idea that people can participate at this type of event. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Celine. And yeah, I do remember you talking about the different watch parties and stuff. And so I think, like, I wonder if, like, I think we could talk about that later, maybe not in this meeting, but because I think that can be something that we add later, maybe, hopefully.
Yeah, because
it's something that's appropriate.
Yeah, because usually Mayreed's at this, and if that's how to pronounce her name, forgive me if I'm not getting the name pronounced right. But yeah, had like, seemed really interested, like the Halifax libraries seemed interested in that idea. And given like we are, well, June, so it may give enough time, even if it's a few locations, that could be good.
For sure. Yeah. Thanks, Celine.
No problem.
Okay, before I move on to the next speaker, I just wanted to note in the chat that Melissa said it might be tricky to, I think this is for the order of events, having like the booth set up first and then moving into the panel, then moving back to the booths. It might be tricky to do it that way because we always have to do a mic check with the panelists, so they wouldn't be able to be at the booths to have conversations beforehand. And I do remember, like, when we start right kind of at like on the dot, usually the mic checks have happened right before. So I'm just putting it out there also because it was in the chat. But I'm going to move on to Nick Harris now, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I kind of go both ways on booths available all the time versus, just afterwards. I've kind of seen similar things both ways. So I think it depends on the intent and how we decide, obviously, as a group to structure it. I think if people know there's a panel at 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, whatever time, they are aware of what time that will happen. And so I kind of, in my head, saw the people at the booths not necessarily being like only that one business unit person. Like I kind of like pictured there'd be like, one or two people at least, like in addition to the panel from the business unit coming to also support the booths, but maybe that just wouldn't happen. So I kind of picture like the people who are actually presenting, can still do the mic check and can still do those kind of technical pieces. without interrupting like a representative from the unit engaging in like booth conversations or just general information, those kinds of things. And I think you can still have the start and end time for online and the start and end time for the panel very clearly advertised for folks, and have that kind of like a space to kind of soft land pre and post panel, so that there's kind of like, yeah, a welcoming environment. And then the food, I agree, like afterwards, food afterwards. So that last half like is really kind of the push of people, you know, going to the booths, having food around, that kind of thing. But I don't think that there's necessarily a harm in having booths open beforehand. But again, can be swayed both ways. I can see both pros and cons to either. I think it depends on intention, and it depends on what our goal is. If it's delivering information and bringing people together, and learning what the questions are, you know, I don't think that there's a wrong choice. And again, I think it comes down to like being clear about what's happening, like the series of what's happening for the event, so people who are arriving are aware, and they can plan accordingly whether they really are interested in booths only. And you know, they can plan around that time. Okay, booths are open a half hour beforehand. Great, I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to dip out. Or you know, and I know the panel starting like at 6 o'clock sharp. And maybe I can't physically picture the space right now, but maybe the parts that Celine was mentioning about like having it more open versus closed off, that might factor into kind of like flow. So if people are at the booths and still kind of supporting the booths, they can still engage with the main event as well. Again, I don't know how well that can go, but yeah, that's all. That's all I have for right now.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. I agree. I also can I see the benefits of both and the cons of both. It's a complicated one. Selena, I see your hand up, but I am just keeping track of time. And so if it's okay if I go through the list, and then we'll come back to you if there's if hopefully there's time. Cool. Okay. Who is next? Anne Sinclair.
Thank you. I don't have anything to add at this point.
Cool. Thank you, Anne. Jamil Sino.
I hear the complaints about having some time to take in what's going on with the event, and I wholeheartedly agree. So I guess a couple of clarifying questions come up from that, and they don't need to be answered right now, but is in a sense, like, who is the target audience for this? I hear, you know, obviously saying the city of Halifax or the HRM is an answer, but sort of, are we looking for people who are already invested in disability and disability justice, or are we looking for people who are starting to like dig their feet or more invested into the direction of the city, and the way that we are planning to like as together to like move it forward? And if so, how are we reaching out to those people, and what methods of communication are we giving to them ahead of time so that they can know what to expect of the event, who will be there, and how to engage with the event ahead of time? I think would also help a lot with being able to take in that information and not be overwhelmed with all of the lights and sounds and noises and smells and stuff like that. So just like a couple of touching points, because if we can address those, it might also help people prepare themselves mentally and physically for these events as well.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I love that question. Who is this for? Who are we prioritizing in like this space? Cool. Who is next? Councillor Laura White.
I'm okay.
Cool. Thank you. Councillor Jean Saint-Amand.
Nothing new for me either. I'm having a hard time talking. I'm good.
Cool. Thank you. Councillor Trish Purdy.
Also good. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Kathy Stevenson. Kathy, are you there? I know the internet's been a tough. Oh, there we go. Gotta love Eastlink.
Just pretend I'm not here. Can you see me? Because it's saying you can't see me?
No, but we can hear you.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Thanks, Kathy. It's all good. I know Eastlink. I am also with them. Okay, I'm next on the list. Oh gosh, I've lost all my trains of thought. Oh, actually, while it's my turn to speak, I do want to just speak to Elizabeth in the chat posted. I could speak to the convo I had with the previous legislative assistant about satellite locations, so like the different library things. In previous years, they had advertised the satellite locations, staff were sent to the locations, but no one attended, and the general suggestion I received was to concentrate staff efforts on the one location. I see. Okay, and then Melissa is saying, given that there's only a few more minutes left in the meeting, I'm hoping we can come to a consensus on the takeaways from this meeting. Is everyone in agreement that Parks and Recreation will be the final booth? The others will be the Accessibility Directorate, the province, essentially, and then the panelists. So Halifax Transit, 311, Diversity and Inclusion, Community Safety, Public Works, and Planning and Development. And I'm getting some agrees in the chat. I also, while people are thinking on this very briefly, I wanted to also speak to something that Celine, you said about, if someone says, I don't want to have a booth or I can't have a booth, I can only stay for my presentation, that I think would be a good opportunity to say, oh, well, now there's a place where we can invite someone else. But I think for the starting place, we should nail down essentially what Melissa has asked us in this chat so that we can move on with the next parts of the planning stages. Because I think for today, the main thing that we need is who we're asking to come and that like sort of more general order of events, just so that they know what they're expected to do. At the very least, who we want to do a presentation and then who we want to have a booth. And I think we have nailed that down, but is anybody not in agreement? I guess we don't have to vote on this technically, but does everybody agree generally with the panel or the booths that we've chosen, which is going to be the 6 panelists, Parks and Rec, and the Accessibility Directorate? Maybe give a quick hand up, or we're not doing a full vote, so we don't have to say aye. And I can't tell Oliver if that is a hand up to say, yes, I like this, or I have a question. Okay.
It's I like this. We're good.
Okay, great. Sorry. Okay. All right. Looks like everyone's generally in agreement with this. So Melissa, and Celine, I'm going to come back to you, but before that, Melissa, do you have what you need to move on from this meeting?
But that, yeah, but there will be a lot more to come.
Yes. Cool. Thanks, Melissa. Okay, Celine, did you want to add something else before we probably close up the meeting? Yeah.
So because I think it was in February, no, wait, I'm losing months. I think it was either March or April. We had booked the hall, and the hall, we have it from 3 o'clock to I think 9, about give or take 9. So that's the thing. It's like we have this chunk of time, we have this opportunity, and like we're saying, like to be able to connect, for people to come in. And I understand about mic checks and stuff, but like I personally, because I've worked in broadcast and stuff, I'm not someone who's going to panic really harshly on those things. Because if it's set up, it's set up. We can find a way to make sure they'll be set up when it's time again. But yeah, that's the thing. It's like the question is, if we have 3 to 9, what time do the panelists start? What time is the Q&A? And so again, if we're deciding, let's say, for example, because I know a lot of these events can start at 6, sometimes at 7, because I know at the library, a lot of presentations, give or take, are either at 6 o'clock or at 7 o'clock that they start. So that's the thing. It's like kind of asking the question of, do we have, let's say we are at 3, we set up and we open at 5 for people to come in. And that's what I mean about that connection with booths beforehand. And even just to add to what Jamil has mentioned, like, who is this for? And for myself, when I first started in disability advocacy, wasn't all based on what are my barriers, what do I face, what do I want in accessibility. What had taken me even more deeply when I was approaching a friend of mine who doesn't live here, but she's disabled and has a disability that is quite complex. And hearing her being very happy that I was taking this on, she says, I'm so glad you're taking this on. I know you have this energy, because most disabled people are too tired to fight. And for myself, this is the reason why I would love to have a more open invitation from the public to come, because we have put the brunt on disabled people, especially the very tired ones, to fight for themselves. And advocacy is a full-time job, unpaid job. We have a top-down approach to social care in this province. And I feel that it is important to have the public come in, because sometimes the public will be like, we need more numbers of people to help fight. Because right now, like I say, if we have the Paul Regan Hall closed in and everything, we're still back stuck at niche, and we're still putting all of the weight on the disabled people themselves to have to fight. And it is a big fight, you know, because I've mentioned earlier, like, I'm technically on an advocacy burnout, because it's like there's so much to do, and seeing how so very little people are in it, right? Like, we need more people. We need a bigger army, is what I'd like to say, without sounding like a warmonger. But anyways, those are just like the two things that I wanted to bring up. But like, again, 3 to 9, we have an open opportunity to kind of really make it a fair that is before the panel show. Like, we could have people, a lot of random people come in and walk away with, oh my God, I never thought of this. I never thought of that. Because I even through being chair here, I got surprised by a lot of things that it never was in my scope, you know? So anyways, it's 6. So thank you.
Thanks, Celine. And yeah, I do want to be mindful of the time. And then just in the chat right now, we have that in the past, we've said that the event is going to go 6:30 to 8:30 is like the actual sort of like talking official times. Maybe something we can consider later on in like another meeting is if we have like open time before like the 6:30 panel start time, where people can just sort of like mingle and chat, and maybe if people have time to put their booths in there, they're just coming from work anyways, but perhaps that's a later conversation, but also perhaps we need to know that now. So go ahead, Melissa.
Thanks. I would recommend folks that we know that now, because my hope was to schedule in terms of business units and kind of get them out thoughts about this sooner rather than later. And I just want to say one thing about the 3 to 9. Yes, we have the library book, but that's more for setup. So typically, because we do hire people, we hire like a large chain company. It takes them quite a bit of time to set up. They bring all their gear. So it's not really an appropriate spot early in the day for people to be coming. So that's kind of why we book it. Get as long as what we do, because there's a lot of setup that even the committee never saw before, because it's always myself and the clerk's office. They're early, so I appreciate Celine what you're saying, but I just don't think like there would be space. And then the second point to that is I think we have to be mindful of staff time to be able for that length of time. And that's not going to, like, staff are probably not going to be available for like 4 hours. I'm just being honest. So like, I think these are all good ideas, but like behind the scenes there are some limitations.
Perhaps, but I'm sorry, I just want to jump in. I've worked booth shows. I've set up complex booths within like 45 minutes. Sometimes you don't have a lot of time to set up, like, and that's why it's just a little frustrating. And we're paying people to set this up, and it's just like, I've already done it. It's like, it's not as complex. It's just, I don't know. For me, it's a shame, because we have 3 to 9, we have an ability that if we get so wrapped up on the complexities, and of course somebody's going to say the setup is going to be this long, especially if they're being paid for it. But when it's at your free will and you have X amount of time, you're going to find a way. Like, these are not complex booths, you know, and I'm talking about craft booths, like where I had to like build a 10 by 10 store. So I just don't understand, like, putting just sheets and pamphlets on a table. How long does it really take is the question. But that's just I'm sorry, I'm just once in a while just kind of frustrated with some of this process.
Yeah, I hear you, Celine. I do. I know. Yeah, and I think like, yeah, municipality stuff. Am I right?
Oh, I know, but it's just like
Yeah.
it just feels like watching 20 academics discuss
For
how
sure.
to screw in a light bulb. And this is part of where my advocacy is in burnout because
For
I'm
sure.
getting really tired of it.
Yeah, I know. Trish, I see your hand up, and then I think we should probably look to adjourn the meeting.
They're also, because it's at a library, what about using just the library space if people want to come early and congregate and talk? And I mean, if we can't open the doors into the space yet, but I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful library. I don't know, just throwing that out there as a suggestion, but I know we have to go.
Even, and maybe this is something we can like find, like really get into the bare bones of next, just to say like the panel starts at 6:30. We say like doors open at 6 and people can, even for community to like just get in touch with each other. I find that is usually what happens. I think
True.
we've done that in the past.
But I can argue
so
that
like
we
a
could
middle,
start it
yeah.
at 5. I can argue that we can
I know.
start it at 5. Like,
Okay. Yeah, I know. All right. So with all that being said, I must announce the date of the next meeting, which is August 18th, 2025. There is no meeting in July. I can't remember why we don't do it in July, but I will appreciate that because I work a lot during Pride Month. So it'll be nice for that. Oh, yeah, Elizabeth, you probably have a better reason for this than my schedule.
So some of the reason is just because so many people tend to be on vacation in July, and we at the clerk's office find that a lot of July meetings sometimes end up being canceled anyway. That being said, even though there's not an official meeting set in July, if the committee did wish to have a special meeting to discuss the town hall, that's always an option that's at the committee's disposal. If there's ever an item that the committee finds is relatively urgent or would really like to meet and discuss, holding a special meeting is always an option, just to put that out there and clarify that.
Okay. And if a committee member would like to request a special meeting, do they email you for that?
Yeah,
cool.
We could do
Okay.
that. And then looking into that, what probably the next step would be, will Ada consult with the chair and then also committee members to see who would be able to attend the meeting, some consultation with staff as well. But yeah.
Cool. Okay. Thanks, Elizabeth. Okay, so number 12, adjournment. I am looking for a mover to adjourn, and we don't need a seconder. I'm seeing Jamil Sino had a hand up, so we are moved by Jamil. We are adjourned at 6:06 p.m. Thanks, everybody, and congrats to the elected people of this meeting.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Have a good rest
Thanks,
of your
everyone.
night.
Thanks.